Welcome, everyone. I want to remind everyone that this session is going to be talking about engaging OSHA effectively in your campaigns. And it's going to be a great session where you get to learn a little bit about how OSHA works and how folks in different regions throughout the country have used OSHA effectively to support its members and strengthen workplace health and safety conditions. I did want to go and do a quick overview of who we are at National COSH. I know that some of you, this may be your first call, or for some of you, it's, you are participating in several of our teach-ins. But just in case you have not heard of our organization, we promote safe and healthy conditions for all workers through different means, which is education, organizing, advocacy, and activism. And we just launched a new website, or that's nationalcosh.org. We highly encourage you to visit the new website, and you'll find more information about our campaigns, our resources. It's available in both English and Spanish. The other piece to share for today is what the goals of today's session are. And some of those goals include building a better understanding of how powerful safety and health issues can be for workers' rights. We also want to explore ways we can make OSHA more effective, and then learn about tools and strategies that are available in our efforts to organize around safer workplaces. And throughout today's presentations, you'll see that we'll be able to highlight each of these goals outlined in today's session. So in terms of our agenda, we're going to start off with a general overview of your worker rights. What are our rights under OSHA? And then we'll move into some examples, regional examples of how different organizations that we've invited on this call today have used OSHA effectively to build their campaigns, how to engage their members in that effort. Later, we'll be talking towards the end of the call. We'll be sharing some of our demands to OSHA. We want to make sure that OSHA continues to be an effective agency, that it is present, that it's doing its work of enforcement, putting pressure on employers to develop good programs around workplace health and safety. And then we'll finalize the session today with some announcements. I'm going to now toss it to my two colleagues at National COSH, two of our team members. We are going to now invite Peter Dooley and Brittany Jenkins, who are going to help us out on this next session overview about workers' rights. Brittany and Peter.
Thank you, Jessica. Brittany, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everyone, I'm Brittany. I am the Worker and Network Organizer for National COSH. I'm also lead in the Southern Organizing. So glad everyone could make it here today, and I'm really excited to share all this wonderful information with you.
Great. So we're going to first go over some of the kind of basics about OSHA protection for safety and health, and just talk about sort of how it applies, when it applies, and all sort of share some experiences about our how we've sort of worked with OSHA in the past. So first of all, the first principle to know is that there's a federal OSHA that is empowered by the OSHA Act, but they enforce about half the states, and the other half have state plans that the states have opted to have their own OSHA plan in which that's enforced by the states, but they all have to be at least as effective as OSHA. So that's really important to know. And then there's some states that have kind of a combination of the both, where they have federal enforcement for private sector employees and state enforcement for public sector employees. So we'll talk more about that as we go through it. Next slide. So we're going to talk about 5 principles to help us in our work in sort of how we engage with OSHA related to workplace health and safety. And the first one is this principle of how powerful safety campaigns are, and very, very winnable, in the sense of there's tremendous needs throughout all workplaces to have better health and safety programs in place. It's a universal truth. Too many workers get injured or made ill on the job, and there's tremendous ways that we can make improvements to prevent those injuries and illnesses from happening. We know this from experience, and the best, the absolute best issues to address is obviously the ones that are of most interest and concern to workers. There's lots of health and safety issues in various workplaces. They include things like short staffing, as you see in the photo, nurses, ventilation, as you can see from teachers, especially during COVID, of course. And then there's other safety standards related to unsafe equipment, and other very specific standards, like fall protection for workers who are working at heights. So these are all really, really powerful issues. But when we decide, which issues and which issues to focus on, and how to come up with a strategy, it's important to know how OSHA could fit into some of those issues, because OSHA covers standards that they have in place where they can enforce employers to literally abide by the standards, and if they don't, they can be given fines and citations for being in violation. But OSHA doesn't have standards for all health and safety hazards. So you have to kind of know a little bit about what they do cover and what they don't. We often compare OSHA to sort of a minimum wage kind of thing, where it's the minimum health and safety standards that are in place, but it doesn't cover all the standards. So like for production pressure or understaffing, that specifically themselves are not covered by OSHA. But as we'll see later, there can be ways that those things can be covered under what's called a general duty clause. So the other really powerful thing about the safety issue for workers, is that the amount of resources that are available are tremendous. There's as Jessica mentioned, National COSH just launched its new website, which is totally bilingual, and it has a lot of different resources. There's groups, of course, National COSH has 26 affiliates around the country to be working on issues regionally and locally, and so there's, and of course, there's lots of worker advocate groups, worker centers, federations of groups regionally that are there to support workers and advocates to really make workplaces safer. And so there's a whole community that is very, very passionate about this issue, and that are there to help. So the final principle is this concept that with collective action and planning and really sort of knowing the ins and outs of how the system works. We often say our goal is to become sort of a jailhouse lawyer, where we understand what the OSHA standards are. We learn more about their processes, and really that's the goal of this session, is to really be able to share information about our experiences and how we've had successes, and you'll see lots of examples of those as we proceed in the program. So Brittany, do you want to get us going? And FYI, we're going to have sort of what we call an OSHA quiz. And this is an open book quiz. There's no mock, there's no marks or anything. Any way you can find the answer, that's great. And so Brittany, you want to get us started off?
Yes, so if you guys look in the chat, there's a link to the doc for all the quiz questions. We're inviting you to either, in that doc that's being posted, to either put your answers there, or you can just put them straight in the chat. We're going to do this together, so it's going to be open. So, don't feel like we're going to grade you at the end and send it out to you at the end of this class. We're not. So we can go to the first question. I'll wait till we make sure that's the doc is there. All right, so question number 1. All workers in the U.S. have a legal right to a safe and healthy job. True or false? You can throw that in the chat right now. What do you think the answer is? True or false? We'll give it about 30 seconds to everyone to be able to answer. Okay, I see everyone. The chat is going. Okay, and let's kind of go to the answer. You can go to the next slide.
So this is like, several of the questions are pretty there's kind of trick questions in lots of ways, right? But it's meant to sort of get us thinking about these issues. And in fact, well, for one thing, all workers are not covered under OSHA, right? OSHA is very specific in terms of its coverage, which was part of the Congressional Act passed in 1970. And it mostly covers private sector workers. But not all private sector workers. Probably the best example are workers that are truly self-employed. And of course, we all know there's a lot of controversy sometimes workers are designated self-employed,
¿La misma movie o es otra?
but they really may be working for an employer. So so that's an exception. And by and large, most public sector workers are not covered. But you'll see, we'll provide the full answers to these at the end of the program, a link to a document, and you'll see it sort of spelled out better. Yeah.
Okay, next question. So question number 2, the person in charge of an OSHA inspection is 1, an OSHA labor liaison, 2, an OSHA compliance assistant specialist, 3, a OSHA compliance safety and health officer, or 4, an OSHA regional director. Again, I'm going to invite everybody to place their answers into the chat, and we'll go give everyone like another 30 seconds to do so. I see everyone answering away. About 10 more seconds. And can we go to the next slide with the answer?
So that's really great. A lot of folks, had number 3, the what's known as the COSHO in the short, language of OSHA, the Compliance Safety and Health Officer, who's the main person in charge of the inspection. And this question is just to give you a sense for some of the key players, within the OSHA offices that we deal with. So by and large, the COSHO is the person is the lead inspector who is really sort of setting up the meetings, going through doing an inspection with representatives of management and workers participating in most cases, and really sort of in charge of the inspection. But the other folks listed are really important to know. The OSHA labor liaisons are in every region, and they are there to really be an advocate for workers and all workers related to how sort of how OSHA is sort of connecting with them, related to any kind of complaints, any kind of issues that come up. So the OSHA labor liaisons, and I know there's at least a couple on this call, are there to help you. And we always have sessions with the OSHA labor liaisons at our CoshCon conference, which you'll hear more about. The compliance assistance specialists is another position within the OSHA offices, and they can provide general information about their programs where they can assist workplaces and any kind of issues in terms of complying with standards. And of course, the regional directors, there's 10 OSHA regions around the country, and they all are administered. The top administrator is the regional director. And all of these folks are really, the one theme of this whole session is that we really need to be engaging with all the resources that are there to make sure that the end job of making workplaces safer for all workers is really that we're doing the best that can be done. Yeah.
Okay, question number 3. Legally, who is responsible for providing a healthy and safe workplace? Is it the employer, the workers, the union, OSHA, or all of the above? Okay, I see the chat's going. Again, another 30 seconds for everyone to get their answers in. Ten more seconds. Okay, next slide with the answer.
Well, you all aced that one, I saw. But, if you listen to many employers, you would think that the employee is responsible, right? Because employers are always trying to shift the responsibility for health and safety onto workers. It's always, they blame workers for literally being injured. They blame workers for being out of compliance. And it's a constant problem in most, if not all, workplaces. But legally, it's always back to the employer is the one who's legally responsible for providing the workplace free from hazards and making it a safe workplace. So that's something that we gotta constantly be, reminding them that it is their responsibility. And I mentioned before about just one more issue that, besides the OSHA standards, there's a very, very powerful standard called the General Duty Clause of OSHA. And it's known as the 5A1 clause. It's kind of a nice sort of thing to know when you're dealing with the employer or anybody. And it's that basically says that the employer is responsible for maintaining a workplace free from recognized hazards. It doesn't have to just be a standard. It can be some other issue that a worker gets seriously injured or even killed in many circumstances. And this 5A1 general duty clause is is able to be used by OSHA to cite in those cases. Yeah.
Okay, question number 4. True or false? You have the right to information about the hazards in your workplace. Okay, true or false? And I'm seeing you guys enter. 30 seconds. Ten more seconds for everyone to get their answers into the chat. And if you can move on to the next slide.
So in fact, OSHA provides more availability for information that requires the employers to be providing workers with information about safety and health hazards more than any other worker labor law there is. The amount of, I mean, workers have the rights to all information like related to the chemicals that they work with, any kind of air samples that are taken in the workplace, any kind of medical testing that's taken related to health and safety, injury records, which are often claimed by the employer to be private information or whatever, but it is actually available. The injury records are available to workers and their representatives. It's one of the most powerful things about the OSHA rights that workers have. And again, people need to know exactly what they're entitled to in order to be requesting those information under law. Yeah.
Question 5. The employer does not have to provide and pay for the safety equipment, that's the personal protective equipment, PPE, necessary for workers to do the job safely. True or false? Okay, give you about 30 seconds for everyone to get that into the chat. Ten more seconds. And we can go to the next slide with the answer.
So nothing could be further from the truth than this statement. Because employers absolutely have to both provide and pay for safety equipment that's necessary to get the job done. But it's even more than that, because the requirements under OSHA require the employer to eliminate the hazards whenever it's feasible. So instead of relying on personal protective equipment, which is kind of the last resort, they really are charged with eliminating hazards. So let's look at an example: noise exposure. In a lot of workplaces, noise is a very, very dangerous hazard that eventually causes deafness in loss of hearing in workers. Many workers suffer from this, and the responsibility of the employer is to reduce those noise levels. In addition, if they've done everything that they can do to reduce noise levels, and they still need personal protective equipment such as hearing protections, the employer has to provide and pay for that equipment. There's many other examples where it's the employer's responsibility to provide the equipment. Yeah.
Okay. Question number 6. If you are an immigrant or temp worker You are not protected by any workplace safety laws. True or false? Put that in the chat, your answer for the next 30 seconds. About 10 more seconds. Okay. And the answer.
So it is false. There is no limitations to who, what workers are covered, regardless of their immigration status or any kind of paperwork or such. So all workers that are, again, all workers that are working for a workplace, an employer that is covered under OSHA or a state plan or whatever is absolutely covered by all protections. And you may know that there's been a lot of work that National COSH has been part of to improve the protections in workplaces when there's a fear or threat of any kind of intervention that would be impacting health and safety on the job, especially for immigrant workers and such. So it's something to know that that those protections are being improved all the time, and there's a lot of discussions about that. So yeah.
I would like to use this time, Peter, to answer some questions that anyone had. I see one in the chat right now. Richard asks, does workers' compensation cover undocumented workers in all states?
So the workers' compensation, which is, by the way, it's worth mentioning, injured workers are really deserve a lot of support from us, because that's the result of what happens when health and safety programs are not in place. In many workers' compensation laws, which are all very, very state oriented, they're all different state by state. We know that most of them have no barriers to immigration status in terms of being covered. I don't know in exact, for every exactly state whether it's that way. Others may know and should chime in.
Okay. If there is no other questions, let's move on.
Muchas gracias, Peter and Brittany. Muy excelente presentación. Vamos ahora a ir a la siguiente.
Thank you very much, Peter and Brittany. Excellent presentation. We're going to go ahead to the next segment of our conversation. And now we're going to go ahead and talk about some local examples of how to involve with OSHA in a more efficient, effective way. We have invited 3 different people that will be presenting on how they have used this. Our first colleague, Katy Duarte. Katy comes from the union SEIU 32BJ, and they represent airport workers. But I'm gonna go ahead to let Katy talk to us more about her work and how they have been able to take advantage of OSHA to improve the conditions of workers in Miami. Thank you, Jessica. If you can move to the next slide, please. Just like Jessica is saying, my name is Katy Duarte. I work for the union. 32BJ is the name. I'm gonna go ahead and give this presentation in Spanish. There are some terms that I know better in English than Spanish, so I might do a little bit of Spanglish, but I'm going to do my best to try to do it in Spanish completely. Next one. So to discuss a little bit about our union, 32BJ is the biggest of the country that has members of services of property, and that includes people who are cleaning buildings, security officers, and workers of airports. And thanks to the organization work that they have been doing, these employers, they have been able to win, to raise the standards of security and health. Next one, please. So for this presentation, I wanted to focus on our campaign of the airports on the south of Florida. And to give you some more context of who are these workers have been doing work such as cleaning the plane cabins, push people that are in wheelchairs, they carry the luggage, etc. There's a lot of work that they have to be doing so that the airport and the cabins are working well. And they're subcontractors. They're not employees, direct employees from the airline. They're employees from subcontractors who work for the airline. And for that campaign, when it comes to our efforts to organize and our efforts of safety and health, it's very important for us to understand very well what is the day by day of the work they do. And that way we can identify the hazards that they're facing on the everyday at work. Next one. So when we were talking with these workers on Southside Florida, and also based on the experiences of previous campaigns that we have done with airports, we were able to find many hazards. Some of them is the exposure to cockroaches in many different places, heat exposure. So if you think about the people that are placing the luggage on the to get on the planes, they're like under the sun, outside, under the exposure of whatever is the weather, and in Florida is the heat. Exposure to sharks and bloodborne pathogens that can be transmitted to blood. But there's also other things like urine and other things that people are being exposed when they clean the planes. Also, another hazard that we were able to find is that they have some buses that they use to clean the planes, and there's a platform that they use it. This can go really high because it has to go to the door of the plane, but sometimes the guardrails were not functioning properly and people could fall and it could be fatal. So also think about the high noise levels, everything that's happening around. It all exposes the workers to high noise levels. There's also, when we were doing interviews to workers, we realized that they didn't really have the best training information as it relates to different hazardous chemicals that they're using to do cleaning, and also other issues with vehicles. For example, some of them were not working well. The equipment, mechanical problems that can represent an example, doors that are not closing completely, etc. So this is like a summary of the problem, but they were other type of problems. So when we were talking about the campaign and how we were doing it, I know that the focus has been on OSHA, but I also wanted to give you an overview that's more complete of the campaign as well, because it's not only about OSHA. At the beginning, it was to understand well. I want to highlight what's the day by day of the worker, because that's when we could identify the different hazards, and they were not the same for all the workers. Actually, not even in the same category. So we started to understand and have detailed conversations with workers about the problems of health and safety. There were also elements of education with the workers about what were their rights around safety, taking the information from these detailed conversations. What we did was a report that was providing a summary of these problems, and we turned it into the airport. Back then, what the airport did was only to send a report to the company, and the company responded uh, negating the allegations of the workers. Another important part of the campaign is that workers will get together with elected officials, with members of the community, and share their testimonials and have that commitment from the campaign. There was a moment in the campaign where there was a group of workers
A group of workers spoke with an investigative journalist here in Florida, that he's very well known, has a show that's very well known here in Miami. And the workers were willing to talk to him, and the reporter did a very in-depth report on safety issues, included videos, pictures, conversations with the workers, and this is something that was published a few days later. We also had a roundtable with different people, I think 2 members of Congress, 1 local elected official, and a commissioner, where they publicly shared their issues around health and safety. At that moment, the company again denied that these issues existed, and they also said that it was a part of the union's campaign, that they did not have those kind of issues, etc. And something else we also did at that time was to submit a formal claim with OSHA for the Miami airport. But OSHA also, when they saw the media coverage, they did their own referral inspection. I think it's what it's called. And as many of you know, this process with OSHA takes many months. In this case, it took 6 months. But meanwhile, as part of the organizing campaign, the workers did many actions, not only around health and safety, but this campaign was also to inform workers about other rights they have. And it also helped to present claims on other issues, including hours, wages, and something else that the workers did during those 6 months is there was a strike, and there were other actions during this time. After the 6 months, they concluded. If you can go back. Thank you. And that is when OSHA finished their investigation, and they gave a citation to the company due to different violations that are related to the previous slide, violations because of the pathogen, bloodborne pathogen issues, things that had to do with noise level, use of chemicals, and also something related to the heat using the general clause that Peter referred to before. That's one of the violations that were included. And later, this did not happen at the same time, but around this time, we also presented a formal claim against the Lauderdale Airport that came out in 2020. And they also gave a citation to the company for different violations, more than anything related to the workers who cleaned the cabins. And what I can also say about this process with OSHA is that it was a way in which the workers were able to see their power in organizing themselves to take action around health and safety, to learn about their rights, to go to OSHA, to present their claim and talking to the media, etc. It's something that helped inspire, empower the workers around that. And also the fact that it was OSHA, a government agency, that found enough evidence to give a citation to the company around health and safety issues really validated what the workers were saying, because it became increasingly more difficult for the company to deny that there were health and safety issues. Next slide, please. So at the end, after a while, we won the campaign. The workers were able to organize as a union. I wouldn't say that it's just thanks to the OSHA claims. Like I said before, there were several actions that the workers took part in to organize themselves. But the fact of what I mentioned earlier, the fact that they had the experience that what they were saying was true, that there was enough evidence, that really helped the workers, and also receiving community support in regards to our campaign. So the workers ended up forming their union, and as part of this victory, the company also accepted to form a health and safety committee, a joint committee, along with the employees and the management, the company management, and they also agreed on hiring an independent expert in health and safety to do walkthroughs on the workplace, to do health and safety trainings. And so it was a big, huge victory in Florida, and it also helped in general, so to get workers to demand more when they're negotiating, whether it's a contract, and also when it comes to health and safety. That's it. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kathy. Such a beautiful summary overview of your campaign and how you use different tools and strategies. Thank you for going beyond OSHA in this topic. And this is also about how we can use OSHA like you did as a pressure tactic against employers who do not provide health and safety workplaces. But it was really great to hear how you use the community, elected officials, media, etc. And again, at the end, forming a health and safety committee. I think it's a really important victory. We've also had sessions here about what are some efficient work and safety committees, and I'm gonna ask my team to share some of this handout that we have on how to form these committees in Spanish and English.
He's currently the co-director of the Southern California Kosh Group. Cipriano is also a board member of our National Kosh Board of Directors, and he's based where I'm at, which is Los Angeles, California. Hey, Cipriano.
Hey, Jessica. Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for inviting us to this space to talk through some of the ways we've been engaging Cal OSHA in worker organizing. My name is Cipriano Belzer. I am the co-director of SoCal Kosh, which is the Southern California Coalition for Occupational Safety and Health. We can go to the next slide. For those of you who are unfamiliar with us, we advocate for safe and healthy workplaces and secure jobs for all workers. We aim to disrupt the root causes of work-related injuries, illnesses, and fatalities. We expand worker power through coalition building across California. Here in the Southern, we have a coalition in Los Angeles and IE. It's a combination of about 40 different organizations, and Orange County. And we do this through direct action, education of workers, leadership development, and engaging enforcement agencies. So I think we're all pretty familiar, right? There are barriers to to workers and then filing complaints with Cal OSHA, right? And using that and building that kind of power. A lot of that comes from the fear of retaliation and hesitation to put their name on a complaint, right? And that next step after that, right, making sure that workers go public and are putting that pressure on employers. So some of the ways that we help locally, right, and some really effective ways that we found in building that and helping that move forward is relationship building with worker organizations. We have a couple. I'm gonna give you guys 2 examples of some of the major ways in which we've been able to engage with that over the past few years in our organization. Next slide. So those 2 examples, one is a statewide example. So for a time we were doing the Cal OSHA community forums here. This was a statewide forum where the Cal OSHA leadership, so the director of Cal OSHA, along with the deputy director, would meet with us and a coalition of worker organizations and workers themselves, right, from across the state. And we would hold these open forums where workers would be able to come and give their experiences in dealing with Cal OSHA and dealing with the health and safety violations that are on their work, in their workplaces. And Cal OSHA was able to respond and talk to them and kind of educate on the complaint process, right? This was it was really great to create solidarity up and down the state, right? And to show the agency that there is a great and powerful network of people really trying to make sure workplaces are safe. And we wanted to replicate that on a local level. So we began our Cal OSHA regional relationship building pilot here in Southern California across regions 3 and 4, which is like the greater LA area and the Inland Empire. So in building out this pilot with them, we've agreed to 3 meetings a year, right, where we bring to the table 12 worker organizations in like highly impacted industries and communities with the Cal OSHA senior leadership of Region 3 and 4 and the districts within. This has been a really, really, really great process so far, right? One, because I think it's important to note that I don't think a lot of us as worker advocate organizations don't have a full and complete picture, right, of all the complexities of Cal OSHA. What is the internal complaint process like? You know, how do they really review evidence? And Cal OSHA doesn't have an idea of the work that we do, right, and the perspective and the expertise and knowledge of the workers in the industries that we represent. We can go to the next slide. So in saying that, it's been really powerful in building out this relationship. We've had 2 of these meetings so far this year, and in the second one, it's really taken off. We broke everyone out into groups so that these organizations who worked in the regions got to really speak directly to their regional managers and their district managers. From this, we've learned more effective ways of how to implement Cal OSHA complaints. Like, you know, one, we've learned that any evidence that it's submitted in a Cal OSHA complaint, right, if any names are named there, right, the employer can request that. So normally a Cal OSHA complaint, anyone who's named as the complainant is kept anonymous, correct? But if a worker is named, if a worker's testimony is in the evidence of that complaint and they're actually named, when an employer has the right to request that evidence, they can discover who that person is, right? So even in that little piece of information has helped, you know, the organizers and all the organizations who are part of this program really kind of think about one, how to protect workers from the retaliation, but also how to use these complaints, you know, more effectively. We can go to the next slide. So I wanted to, in some examples of how our regional relationship building program has really supported some campaigns that our organization is supporting now. I wanted to give 3 examples. One is a local campaign here in North Hollywood, the North Hollywood stripper strike from the Star Garden Bar, which they're being supported through Strippers United. We were connected to them through NCOSH, through KoshCon, which we all know is a wonderful event. And they were experiencing some egregious health and safety violations, broken stage, no trash cans in the bathrooms, vermin, no ventilation in their break room, nails and things hanging out of the ceiling, a broken pole, right? Like all these different kinds of violations they were experiencing. So we sat down and helped them work through and put together a really comprehensive complaint that we walked and handed in personally to our local Cal-OSHA office. There was a little bit of misunderstanding maybe between the person who accepted our complaint and the workers, right? So we didn't hear anything for a very long time about the complaint. No one reached out to the people who were named in the complaint. And because we had been having this, we had been building these relationships with the local district managers, right? We were able to connect the organizer who was heading this campaign directly with their district manager. They had a meeting where they talked through the complaint, talked through all of the violations, and the Cal-OSHA then understood the severity of the situation and sent out an inspector. This situation is a little interesting too. So they sent out an inspector to the site, and the owner lied to the Cal-OSHA. They were like, no, the owner's not here. I'm the cleaning person. Later, we found out that that was actually one of the owners, which because of that connection that Cal-OSHA had, right, to these workers, they realized what they had been going through, right. So they've launched a full-on deep investigation into this site, which then really bolstered and strengthened that campaign. So these workers have now been going on a 24-week strike, and one of their they do theme strike nights, and one of their theme strike nights was they dressed up as their Cal-OSHA violations, right, just to show how powerful and how helpful Cal-OSHA had been in building their solidarity. Another example is the Long Beach Ports campaign, which is rife with misclassification. That's a huge issue with port drivers here in Los Angeles. We in assisting one of the organizers on this campaign, they submitted a Cal-OSHA complaint, and they immediately got a response back saying that their driver, because of the relationship, they aren't considered an employee, right? They were being misclassified essentially by Cal-OSHA. This organization as well participates in this regional relationship building program, so we were able to connect them, and they had a direct conversation with their district manager, which resulted in them understanding that yes, that this worker was misclassified, so that complaint was actually valid, and they sent someone down from Sacramento to further investigate that complaint and that claim, and ultimately the complaint was sent through, and the worker's complaint was sent through, and then a violation was put against that company. And then finally, on a local level here in Los Angeles, I wanted to give an example of the Clean Car Wash Worker Center. They organize different car wash folks around Los Angeles, and they had put in a complaint with Cal-OSHA around some ETS violations, and some pretty severe ETS violations, but also some mechanical and ergonomic violations that were happening on the job. Workers were having to reach into broken machines to turn on conveyor belts, which, very dangerous. Submit the complaint. They didn't hear anything back for about a month or so. And even those organizers kind of reached out through the official channels, resending the complaint, and then nothing. So again, because this organization is a part of our regional relationship building, we were able to reach out directly to those to the district managers in order to connect them, and they realized that something had happened. The complaint had been lost, but also they were refiling the complaint, and they were prioritizing it, with their inspectors. And within 3 days of that conversation, Cal-OSHA inspectors were out there on the job, citing the employer again, and then building that confidence for that worker organizing as well. You can go to the next slide.
I think that's all I have for you, Cipriano, on the slide, Brent.
Oh, sorry. I thought I had one more, but yeah, thank you. It's for us. Yeah, we realize that connecting and that education and understanding across, the worker organizations and the agency has been really helpful and important.
This is great. Thank you so much, Cipriano. I think it's wonderful that you were able to highlight the importance of building relationships with your regional OSHA offices. I also wanted to flag for folks that Cipriano makes a reference to Cal-OSHA because California has a state plan. So as it was mentioned earlier, 22 states in the country have state plans. So it's important to know whether your state has a state plan because and so forth. But later in the session today, we'll provide a resource index where you could literally just plug in your address and you could find which is your regional office. It'll either take you to a regional federal OSHA office or to your state plan state. So thank you, Cipriano, for highlighting that. Again, SoCal COSH is doing amazing work throughout the state to ensure that they have a strong Cal OSHA and that they are responsive to worker needs. And in addition to that, supporting all these amazing and inspiring campaigns. So thank you again, Cipriano, for your leadership and for your continued support. I'm now going to invite our last presenter in this series, which is Claudia Navarro, and she serves as the co-director of a fabulous organization called We Count, who is also affiliate of our network. We Count is based in South Florida, and they'll be talking a little bit about how they used federal OSHA in this case to strengthen the work that they do. Florida, just to make it clear, does not have a state plan state. It's part of the federal. So Claudia.
Thank you. So yeah, like was mentioned, my name is Claudia Navarro. We Count is a worker center based in Homestead, Florida. As was mentioned, we don't have a state OSHA office. And so the work that we've done over the last several months with our regional office has been, I think, really important. I think a little bit more context, we work in a rural area of Miami-Dade County, predominantly with Latinx and Mayan Indigenous immigrant workers who work predominantly in food, agriculture, horticulture, and construction, along with domestic work. But those are the main industries that we focus on. Right now, we are leading a campaign called Que Calor to win local protections against extreme heat for outdoor workers within the county. And so it's a campaign that we launched last year, and a lot of the work that we've done to engage our local OSHA has been around extreme heat. We can move to the next slide. And so just I think a little bit of background context, we all know OSHA announces their heat national emphasis program in April of 2020, and we got connected to our local office, which the regional office I think covers a very, very wide area. It covers two metropolitan areas, which is Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, all the way down to Miami-Dade County. So it's a little office for a lot of workers. And so OSHA launches their heat emphasis program in April. We get connected thanks to the folks here at COSH in June. And throughout that conversation, we were able to get connected to Lenny Chango, who is our local compliance assistant specialist who work mostly in education and community outreach. And so when we originally had our conversation in early June, we had the idea to connect around Labor Rights Week specifically. And so our goals with that was to build a deeper relationship with each other, to reach workers and educate them about their rights under OSHA, specifically around the heat emphasis program. And for us individually, it was to connect with plant nurseries, right? Because we work and organize the workers and haven't had strong relationships with the plant nurseries that exist here. And I think for a little bit of additional context, South Florida Florida overall has the #1 export when it comes to plant nurseries and like horticulture, ornamental plants. And so it's a very, very large industry here. We also house the largest plant nursery company in the world called Costa. And so it was a lot of opportunities for us to connect with plant nurseries of all different sizes. And so we were excited to connect with Lenny during this week. I think what's also important to name is during the decision to collaborate for Labor Rights Week, we made the decision to go out to actual plant nurseries with with her. And so this is some of the pictures that we have after visiting one of the farms. In the picture on the top right, we have Marta, who is our staff organizer that speaks Mom. And so for every visit we did, she did communicate everything that we were saying in Mom. And then we have Eric, our superstar organizer, on the bottom right, and then just a nice little quick selfie. And so I think what was really important and interesting about this particular relationship is, to our knowledge, this hasn't been done before. Community groups going with OSHA into workplaces. And, you know, given that she's not enforcement, workplaces had the opportunity to turn her away. If she was enforcement, they're on a complaint. Obviously, they could not have, but we, in the process leading up to this, collaborated with our members, created a list of about 10 plant nurseries in the area that we wanted to target, both that were responsible employers when it comes to heat illness prevention, and those that we knew were bad actors, right? In regards to what our membership was telling us. And so she did the outreach beforehand, gave calls, and set up a couple visits. Some of them, when we walked up, had no idea that we were coming, and actually quickly accommodate us, right? And so interestingly enough, some workplaces are not shy to say, OSHA, yeah, sure, come on in, right? And sort of put their best foot forward. Even interestingly, some of the workplaces that we knew were bad actors. And that collaboration with us as a community group both gave a little bit more strength to the message of who we are as a community group and our relationship with a government agency like OSHA. And it gave a little bit more validity during the presentations to OSHA, given that we were speaking in a language that many don't hear, right, when thinking about government collaboration. And so throughout the event, we ended up visiting about 5 plant nurseries over a 3 to 4 hour time span in sort of the late morning, early afternoon. And we were able to talk to over 130 workers over that time span. Some nurseries that we visited, we weren't able to go in and speak to any, but we were able to drop off materials. And like I said, this was mostly around heat illness prevention and heat stress and stroke. And so that was, I think, really interesting to see if could be replicated in other parts of the country, right? What other community engagement can be done with OSHA officials that actually give community groups the backing to go into workplaces? As we know, workplaces are not typically friendly to community groups in this way. So I think it was a really successful day. And then I think the next thing I'll talk about is empleo. Obviously, my folks in California have had empleo for a really, really long time. For those that don't know, it's a 1-800 number that connects workers to multiple Department of Labor resources. So instead of being transferred from one department to the other with your different complaints, it's sort of a one-stop shop that refers your case out and the multiple things that might be going on in your workplace to different divisions. And so you see here at the end, Oscar Londoño, who's the other co-director of We Count, we were invited to the Mexican consulate where other countries' consulates were invited, other community groups, and folks from both the Wage and Hour Division and OSHA were present to sign on behalf of this. And so just another way that we're collaborating with government officials, and we're really excited for this program to be taking place in South Florida, given that it's been so successful in California for so long. And I want to think that might be my last slide, and I might have sped through it. So my apologies to interpretation.
It's fine. It was great. Thank you so much, Claudia, for your presentation. again, highlighting yet another strategy or another point of collaboration with OSHA. In this case, the community engagement piece is so crucial. And thank you to making that point that typically when you have any form of community engagement, OSHA consultation or any of that sort, it's not mandatory to go into an employer does not have to open the doors. However, as you pointed out, Claudia, when it is a complaint and you have an enforcement officer that has an official form of complaint, they may go, whether the employer likes it or not, into the work site. So thank you for highlighting that important piece to create that clarity. I also just wanted to emphasize, which is a transition into our next section of this teach-in, is that we count is part of Region 4 OSHA. And as it was stated in the chat, usually a region covers several states. In this case, it's Florida, Georgia, and I can't think of the other states in Region 4 at the moment. But nonetheless, our national COSH has been very intentional to organize coordinators in the different regions to start building those relationships with the regional OSHA representatives, with the goal that they are more responsive to our worker leaders, our worker advocates, our worker organizations. So again, I'm going to now pass it on to Caitlin Peardy, who leads this effort for National COSH, and she'll talk a little bit of how we've organized at National COSH to be able to, again, build this relationship. So with that said, thank you so much, Claudia, for your presentation. It was excellent.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you to all the panelists. Those were just really excellent examples of how people are helping folks really maximize their engagement with OSHA in service to health and safety at their workplace, these broader power building campaigns, and also really to strengthen the agency itself. And that sort of final piece of accountability and collaboration with OSHA is what we want to turn to a little bit more now. So, like Jessica spoke to earlier, and I think what we see through these examples is that OSHA has a beautiful opportunity right now to really build more meaningful partnerships with workers and with worker organizations. But we know it's not going to happen without people kind of continuing to push. And we just want to make sure that everyone here has the tools that they need to be part of that. Of course, you all are already, but just continuing to give you some tools in your toolbox. So this first slide here, Jessica just kind of previewed this for us, is about regional committees and coordinators. So our experience has been that one of the best levels to engage OSHA at is at that regional level and in sort of partnership with all the other worker groups in your area. And we want to really make this as easy as possible, for everyone, right? So everyone can get involved in OSHA accountability efforts through COSH's regional committees. You don't need to be a part of a COSH group to do this. This is broadly open. And the activities in each region look a little bit different, just depending on where folks are at and what you all are prioritizing. So just to give you a few examples, actually tonight, I believe at 6 p.m. Eastern, our New England region group is about to hold a multilingual OSHA listening session. I think it's like Spanish, Portuguese, Haitian Creole, Cantonese, and Mandarin, where workers are going to have a chance to be engaging, directly with OSHA staff. Our Southern COSH region met in May with the OSHA Region 4 director, along with those more local area office directors and compliance specialists. And over the summer, groups have been, continuing to meet with their area offices to advance their community's needs and priorities. And then in some regions where there's a lot of state plan states, like the West Coast folks, for example, you heard, Cipriano's great examples before. Those regional committees are also just spending a lot of time to really have the groups that are participating learn from each other about how they watchdog and engage their state plan. So there's plenty of space, to really help shape what these groups look like. If you're interested, we have a link here, a couple up in the chat, that'll take you to give you the actual contact info for your regional coordinators, or you can message me now and I can put you in touch. And that link also really breaks down which states we have in which regions. They don't perfectly align with the OSHA regions because these groups are also just promoting health and safety organizing in general. But we can get you all that information if you want to get involved. And Jessica, if you want to go to the next slide, our regional groups, along with other folks from across our network and workers and worker rights folks across the country, are headed to DC at the end of this month to participate in a Workers' Voice Summit that OSHA is hosting at the Federal DOL building. And as part of that process, we've really identified some key asks that workers across the country have for OSHA that we're going to be elevating throughout the summit and afterwards. I'm going to just walk us through these quickly. We're going to be sending you a link to sort of a more comprehensive explanation of each point at the end of the session. But as I go, we'd also love to have you, share in the chat what you want to see from OSHA so that we can keep learning and uplifting that. So the first sort of, demand here is to really maximize access and engagement of workers as collaborative partners with OSHA. So this means, strengthening cultural competency and language justice for OSHA staff, really institutionalizing those language justice practices and enacting ongoing collaboration with workers and advocates. The second piece here is to protect workers from being silenced on immigration status. There have been a few steps taken on this front, but there's a lot more that needs to happen, and this is a huge priority for all of us. I know. The third is to prioritize workers' ability to participate in workplace investigations and enforcement proceedings. So, really making sure that workers are able to take advantage of their rights to a worker representative, that they're being advised of each phase of the enforcement process, that they're being protected from retaliation, all of that good stuff. The fourth here is to ensure that temporary workers are protected by following the temporary worker recommendations that so many folks on this call have been making for many years. So pushing those temp worker recommendations back up to the top of OSHA's agenda, including requiring employers to provide a roster of all workers employed on the day of the investigation, issuing notices to host companies and temp staffing agencies, informing them that retaliation and intimidation of workers is illegal. And then the fifth here, we all deal with such a patchwork of agencies, and the fifth sort of advocacy priority here is to really maximize impact on working conditions by collaborating across state and federal labor departments, including wage and hour and disaster preparedness and response agencies. So please, give us feedback on these key priorities. There's obviously many more. We'll be sharing them, and we'll also be organizing folks who are at the summit and afterwards to really think about what steps, come next and how do we keep moving these things forward. And we'll be keeping everyone here in the loop. So I think then to really wrap us up, we also want to just walk through a resource index that we've made for everyone that can help you with all of the different kinds of OSHA engagement and advocacy that we've heard today. So this covers everything that we've shared and also links to a much sort of wider set of tools as well. And Jessica, if you can just take us to the document. Thank you. And I believe Susie has also just shared this in the chat. Yep, I'll let you go ahead and get that open, Jessica. Thank you. Beautiful. Okay. So we wanted to share this. It's in English and in Spanish, of course. And what you'll see is that we've basically curated three kinds of resources. So tools for navigating the sort of tools for training others on OSHA basics and on their rights under OSHA, tools for navigating the OSHA complaint and inspection process for those of you who are dealing with health and safety issues at your job or wanting to support your members in bringing OSHA into their campaigns, and then tools for, engaging the agency and strengthening the agency itself. So in that first section, you'll find all the quiz questions and answers that we did today, and a really great bilingual graphic resource from UFCW, helping people understand their rights under OSHA and their employer's responsibilities. And then this next section is really all about everything that Cipriano and others were talking about, how to file the strongest possible OSHA complaints and maximize the investigation process. And I'm actually going to ask Jessica if you could click and take me into that document so that I can show it to you. It's super good. And we have to shout out SoCal Kosh because they developed the original version of this guide here for Cal OSHA and generously allowed us to adopt it for the federal level. It's a beautiful guide. There's an English version and a Spanish version. It's going to walk everyone through how to collect evidence and build your complaint. We have sample complaints in here to use as a model, filing your complaint, getting that inspection, and making sure that workers are as represented as possible during all phases of the inspection. So there's just a lot of great materials in here, and we encourage everyone to check this out. And if you go back to the resource index, other than that, the rest of it is basically, we have the regional committee information, the demands that we just looked at, and then a step-by-step guide that helps you figure out, just how do you actually reach out to OSHA? How do you do accountability and collaboration work with them? Lots of practical tips and examples. So we'll keep this document live and fresh, and hope that you use it and let us know if you're looking for other resources. We're definitely here. There's so much out there, and we're here to help you access it. So I think with that, I will pass it back to Jessica to start to close us out for today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Caitlin, for that overview. And I just want to remind folks that all these resources have been curated by our team to make sure they help you in your efforts to use OSHA more effectively. If you did not get it through the chat, don't panic. We're going to send a follow-up email with all the listings of all the resources that we spoke about, which is, the basics of OSHA, how to file an OSHA complaint. I spoke about the worker health and safety committees. So we'll definitely be able to share that over email. All our content is available in English and Spanish, or for the most part. If it's not available in English and Spanish, it may be an old document and we just need to update it. But for the most part, everything we've shared here today is available in English and Spanish. As Caitlin mentioned, there's also samples of things. If you wanted a sample complaint, what are the pieces that make it a strong complaint? There's examples of that as well. So again, thank you so much, Caitlin, for that overview. I just wanted to close today with some announcements that are very important. Caitlin referred to this. OSHA is having a workers convene September 27th through the 29th. Some of you may be scheduling to go there in person to the DC area. We know that we will have about 50 COSH representatives present at this event. However, Caitlin, can you correct me or clarify the event will be accessible virtually as well?
The sort of speaking portions of the event will be live streamed. The more interactive portions, I don't believe are going to be available, although we haven't heard for sure, but my understanding is there will be a live stream and you can register. I'll drop the link right now for registration if people are interested in that live stream option.
Thank you, Caitlin. So again, if you can't make it in person, I think they have a limited amount of of registrations, but nonetheless, you can participate in the listen sessions if interested. Now, the event where everyone's invited, unlimited, and it's available in English and Spanish, and we have engaging sessions, and you get to meet new people and network and meet other organizers, worker leaders, is our annual conference, which is COSHCon, and a couple of you made a reference to it. It's the only national conference on worker health and safety that's national, that brings a diverse group of worker advocates from across the country. This year, again, we'll be hosting it virtually, and we put down the dates there, December 6th through the 8th and December 13th to the 15th. We'll have a series of interactive workshop sessions covering a range of topics around health and safety, and other topics that intersect with health and safety. We'll have great panels, discussions. We're going to have caucuses for meet and greets and to talk on topics of interest to you that may not be covered in a workshop. Again, it's a great space to meet other people. And the whole conference is available again in English and Spanish. So we look forward to that. We will be opening registration very soon. So thank you so much. And I think with that, that concludes our session for today. I wanted to thank everyone who stayed for the full 90 minutes. I wanted to thank all our presenters, Kathy, Cipriano, Claudia, thank you so much. And to our fabulous National COSH team for all their work leading up to this session. We will be having another session in October that will speak to amplifying and uplifting Black worker voices. We'll set an announcement. The date for that event is yet to be finalized, but look out for it in the COSH eBlast and listserv for more information, and that'll be towards the end of October. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day and stay safe.